known for her work in Montessori education and transformational learning. She leads CM STEP, a training program that has supported hundreds of middle and high school Montessori teachers worldwide. Recognized for her contributions to adolescent and adult Montessori programming, she remains active in teacher education and research. Katia also teaches at the University of Virginia, Xavier University, and the University of Wisconsin River Falls. A TEDx and a keynote speaker, she is widely sought after for conferences and workshops. That was a great bio, Katie, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Well, I want to start by asking my esteemed audience, have you ever gotten the talk about your work? So I'll never forget the first time my husband sat me down, and it started, as the talk always does, with, Katie, I'm telling you this because I love you. And that's when I knew I was in trouble. He would continue, and I want to support your work because I know how much it means to you, but I'm worried. So I decide I had better move to the kitchen table, the best spot for these kinds of talks, and then I try to stay present to something I am quite certain I do not want to hear. My love continued. You're keeping crazy hours and you seem so stressed. You always say next week will be better, but next week is never better. I'm trying to stay present here at the kitchen table, but I'm getting my dander up just a little bit too. But then the talk finishes with, and I just miss you. And that hurts, especially when I realize that he's right. But what hurts even more is when I realize I miss me too. I miss the novels I'm not reading, the road trips I'm not taking, the coffee dates I'm not having. But you know, I love my work. I really do. Like many of you, I'm a business owner, maybe a professor, I'm a teacher, I'm an entrepreneur. So people count on me for things. And so I'm just wondering if any of you have ever felt the tension that I was feeling in that moment. That's what I want to talk about today. That tension of feeling passionate about my work and the impact I know I can make, but also not wanting to lose myself to that work. And let's be honest, if you're here, you're probably building things. Maybe you're building a company, a product, a team, a reputation. And yes, we're building revenue. But behind all of that, I believe, is a deeper drive. Most of us are building something because we believe in something. We're building it because we believe in it. We want to make a difference. And we know that our unique brand of magic is something that the world needs. What I've seen is that mission-driven professionals are especially vulnerable to burning out, to disappearing inside our own creations. So we're going to talk today about how we can avoid that, how we can scale and grow and build and lead, and then still come home to ourselves at the end of the day. Because we only have one tiny and treasured life on our planet. Now, of course, society makes this sound so simple, right? All we need to figure out is a little bit of work-life balance. Yeah, I would love to know if you've ever made a New Year's resolution that had to do with a better work-life balance. Me too. But here's the secret I discovered. Balance and the pursuit of it was actually rocket fuel for my feelings of burnout. Hello, Christiane. But for over a decade as a young professional, I pursued this work-life balance with everything that I had. Every time after the talk, I was determined. It was like a puzzle to solve or a competition to win, and I was going to try whatever it takes. First up for me was strict rules. Rules for when I would answer emails, rules for when I would leave work, rules for what weekend activities or conversation topics were allowable. That made me a riot at parties, let me tell you. Now, don't get me wrong. These boundaries that we set around our work can be important. But what I didn't realize was that I was trying to find more freedom and more joy in my work through restriction, through legalism. And that was a special kind of silliness. But even so, if any of the better balance plans that I had ever made had actually worked, then I would be here on this stage telling you about, the 5 a.m. club or the Pomodoro technique or whatever new situation might bring us that peace. But no matter how determined I was, I inevitably found myself back at the kitchen table, having another version of the talk with my husband and trying to figure out what I was missing. I was missing me. So maybe this sounds familiar to you. Maybe you've gotten the talk from your loved ones. Maybe you've tried over and over to reorganize your life in search of this elusive work-life balance. And if so, I want to tell you, hear me now, there's nothing wrong with you. Whether you've been struggling your whole working life or whether it's a more recent struggle for you, it's not your fault that you haven't found the elusive work-life balance. Because as I've come to believe with all of my heart, work-life balance is a lie. It simply doesn't exist. Possibly not for anyone, but definitely not for us. Because for people like us, our work is probably not just a trading of our life hours for a paycheck, though our paychecks definitely matter. But for most of us in leadership positions, we don't get to clock out at the end of the day. And even more than that, we know that our work is how we make a difference. It's the place where our unique personality, our skills, our experiences meet the needs of the world. So let's dig into this idea for a minute, because I think we've been told this work-life balance lie for so long. I really want to unpack it together. And I have two problems with the idea of balance. The first one is that it implies that work and life are wholly separate constructs. It brings to mind for me like a giant scale with something called life on one side that's supposed to be the opposing counterweight to something called work on the other side. And so they are non-overlapping, discrete elements. But to separate our work and our lives is impossible because our work is an important part of our lives and our lives are an important part of our work. I want to say that again. Our work, it is an important part of our lives, but also our lives are an important part of our work because who we are matters. And we bring all of our experiences, all our talents, all our dispositions to serve our work as well. But there's a second issue that I have with this idea of this balance image. And that's that it implies that there's a correct proportion of life to counterbalance whatever amount of work we have going on in our lives. It suggests maybe like there really is a right answer, a set ratio. And if we could just find it, we would magically feel the delight of this thing called balance. And that reminds me of how food scientists have a bliss point that they work hard to find so that we keep buying and eating foods that we know aren't that great for us. But these food scientists, they tinker and tinker, and they're looking for the exact right amount of salt, fat, sweet, and crunch that's going to make that food irresistible. They do study after study to find this bliss point, the point at which the food has maximum craveability. But here's the thing. Your life is not a potato chip. There's no magic point of balance that's going to provide ultimate bliss. There's simply no universal ratio that's true for all people or even the same person across their whole lifespan. Because we all have seasons of our lives, various chapters, And so our work is going to adapt and change as we do. But I'll be honest, it took me a decade of being a Montessori teacher to realize that applying a Montessori perspective of work to my life could make a huge difference. And since most of you probably don't know me, I want to let you know that it has. I've been running my organization for over a decade now, and we've grown it to what I'm pretty sure is now the largest secondary Montessori training program in the world. I've launched a speaking career where I get to help mission-driven professionals reconnect to themselves. And my book, which is called Alignment, a Montessori approach to reimagining work-life balance, will land on doorsteps all over the United States this fall and in other parts of the world a little bit after that. But even with all these initiatives, I've stayed connected to the teaching work that I love, working with undergraduates at the University of Virginia. All of it has been a blessing and an honor in my life. And so I do have a full life. It's one that feels just right for me. But I want to say that I also don't burn the candle at both ends. And you don't have to either. So in the last year, even with these book deadlines and teaching requirements and day-to-day business needs, I've averaged 8 hours of sleep a night. I've maintained my most important relationships. I've gotten physically stronger, and I've taken a total of 7 weeks away from my important work. But I promise I'm not a superwoman. So how did I go from all these kitchen table talks to where I am now? Well, everything shifted for me when I went from seeking work-life balance to creating alignment in my life. And I want to unpack what that word means to me because I do use it a little differently than maybe some other folks. But before I do that, I want to tell you just a quick story because I believe we can learn important lessons in finding alignment, even from a 3-year-old. So I've spent most of my professional life in Montessori education, and I love to talk about that to pretty much anybody who will listen. But for today, I want to tell you just 2 aspects about Montessori education that I think can frame how we think about our work. Because in a Montessori classroom, the word work has some unique connotations. So first, let me tell you about Max. Max's dad came to my friend Heather with a problem. It was great that Max seemed to enjoy his Montessori school, but he was also having trouble adjusting to days that were less routine, specifically the weekend days. And in fact, it was the weekend mornings. Max would cry most weekend mornings, and not even before anything had even happened. He just seemed to wake up and burst into tears. Now, Max's dad was pretty perplexed about this because he loved weekends. Maybe you can relate. But in fact, Max's dad would joyfully announce weekends with a cheer. He would say, "Hooray, hooray, no work today." "Oh," Heather told him, "that's the problem." "What's the problem?" he asked. "The no work part," she said. Because here in our Montessori classrooms, all of these interesting and engaging activities are called work, not play. So to Max, an announcement of no work might as well have been a proclamation of no fun today. Oh, Max's dad saw the problem, and Max didn't cry on weekends after that. You see, Max didn't see work as a drudgery or a necessary evil. His work was interesting, challenging, and in the challenge, it was even fun. So Max can teach us the first lesson from a Montessori classroom, which is about a blurring of work and play. But there's a second lesson that's important too. And that's when most people talk about work, they're usually referring to whatever it is that we do to earn money, our paid employment. I like to think of that stuff as our paycheck work. But Montessori education takes a really broad view of work, with the idea that every single being in our interconnected universe has a unique role to fulfill. They call it a cosmic task. The Montessori scholar Camillo Grazzini explained this idea with a metaphor. And he said, we might think of the world as a great household, a cosmic household, where all the jobs involved in running the household have been divided up and shared. This cosmic task I like to think of as our purpose work, what I am here to do and be right now. And maybe you feel a lot of overlap between your paycheck work and your purpose work. That's been true for me. But getting clear on these two types of work has helped me prioritize the things that really matter the most to me. And that's what's helped me find alignment in my life. Because paycheck work is important for my job, and purpose work is important to feed my soul. And one goal of Montessori education is to help students grow into their own cosmic tasks, their own purpose work. Basketball phenom Steph Curry, the founders of Google and Amazon, actor Helen Hunt, diarist Anne Frank, chef Julia Child, all of these are former Montessori students who went on to make a big impact on our world. But I'm no Steph Curry. So what would it mean for us to live into our cosmic tasks and to blur the lines between work and play? I think it's about bringing our lives into alignment. So let's unpack that word. According to Oxford Languages, alignment can be said according to Oxford Languages, things can be said to be in alignment when they are in the correct or appropriate relative positions. So to visualize this, I like to think of our lives as an ever-expanding piece of magical mosaic art made up of all the different pieces of our lives. And so alignment means that in this life mosaic, we get to choose how the different pieces are going to fit together so that they are in the correct or appropriate relative positions for who we are and what we need right now. So maybe this piece of our life mosaic is worthy of a front and center location, or maybe it's a peripheral piece for right now, not as important. We might have hundreds of mosaic pieces, and so there can be room for our hobbies, our relationships, our paycheck work, our faith, our service, our activism. But the whole mosaic is organized in service to our purpose work, to our cosmic task. So unlike this idea of balance, some huge set of scales where there's a correct amount of work weight over here and a correct amount of life weight over here, alignment doesn't ask us to split ourselves 50-50, 60-40, or any other ratio. Alignment gives us 100%, a whole mosaic, so we can be whole people paying attention to that whole mosaic. And over the course of our lives, our alignment will shift with us. We can arrange and rearrange our pieces. We can grow them or shrink them. We can lose pieces or welcome them back. We can add brand new pieces. We can even grow our mosaic all together, creating even more space for the things that we love. And that's the transformational learning that you're talking about in the chat. So right now, I want you to think, what's one word that signifies an important piece of your life mosaic? It could be anything, because your personal growth and your professional growth go hand in hand. And that brings me to the second definition that Oxford Languages gives for the word alignment. That things can be said to be in alignment when they are in a position of agreement or an alliance. Did you know that some mosaic artists, both ancient and modern, build their creations without any glue? They design these mosaics to fit together so precisely that each piece in the mosaic helps to strengthen the integrity of the whole. That's what the alliance means to me, that the work pieces and the non-work pieces of our life mosaic all contribute to our overall thriving, and they're not in opposition to each other. But when the alliance isn't functioning like we want it to, our life mosaic can start to show cracks. My sister Abby is an award-winning oncology nurse who takes great pride in providing compassionate care to her patients and their families. She works with the very sickest of the sick in her hospital. Her apartment fridge is covered with thank you notes from her patients, and sometimes from their surviving family members. Her work was hard, but she's great at it. And for over a decade, she had really loved her important work. But a number of years ago now, Abby called me in tears. And she asked me, "𝐑𝐞𝐧𝐶, how do you know when it's time to quit your job?" My mind raced. I thought about all the patients she had cared for and all the patients she had yet to care for, all the thank you notes that were yet to be written. How do you calculate the loss when someone like that walks away? Because we know even small things can have a huge impact. Have you heard of the butterfly effect? It's a part of chaos theory, but poetically, it's the idea that when a butterfly flaps its wings, it might cause a hurricane on the other side of the world. And Abby's heart was breaking because it wasn't just any time. It was the fall of 2020, and she was no longer sure she could continue in her profession. But here's the thing. It wasn't just the work pieces of her life mosaic that were amiss. Yes, her hospital was overwhelmed during the COVID pandemic, and it was a really scary time to be a healthcare professional. But her non-work pieces of her life were broken or maybe absent as well. Her beloved dog had just died. Her gym was closed. She hadn't seen any of her friends or family for months, so her days off had been lonely. Abby came to see that many of her life mosaic pieces were not supporting the alignment of her life. And so while it wasn't fast or easy over time, she made both internal shifts that she could make herself, like working on relationships and getting support. And then she also made some external shifts, changing up her day-to-day work, getting new training and new experiences to better support her. And I'm happy to say that Abby didn't walk away from a profession that she loved. And today, she lights up when she talks about her work. She still works 2 days a week at that same hospital as an oncology nurse, but she's also launched a nurse coaching career, working as an entrepreneur that's deeply aligned with her purpose work and her cosmic task, which is to provide compassionate care to people who are touched by cancer. And that's what I think alignment is all about. It's not a rigid prescription. It's not chasing the impossibility of balance. It's about wholeness. It's about freedom. It's about thriving. So let me ask you again, have you ever had the talk, or do you ever miss you? Because I missed me, but I don't anymore. When I was chasing work-life balance, I found that I was thinking too small. Alignment is bigger. It's how we build lives and careers that we don't want to escape from. It's how we remember what really matters to us and how we can learn to continually come home to ourselves and to be at home in our one tiny and treasured life. And while our alignment is personal, it doesn't have to be private. So I want to say that if any of this is resonating with you today, I want to challenge you to start a conversation with someone who could support your alignment journey. Maybe that's a partner, maybe that's a close friend, maybe that's even a colleague. Tell them about the important pieces of your life mosaic. Ask them about theirs. Because when even one person makes an aligned change, it has huge ripple effects. And so if these words are calling to you, or you want to go deeper into what alignment could look like for you or your people, I'd love to stay in touch. We can certainly connect on social, and you can reach me at KatyKellerwood.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter, and we're going to kick off some alignment retreats, virtual and in person, in 2026. So I want to thank you for your important work in the world, because you are a unique and remarkable human being, and you are here to do things that only you can do. Remember that butterfly effect? You are the butterfly. So come back to the kitchen table with me now, but let's have a new kind of talk. Let's talk about your alignment, my alignment, our collective alignment. And let's invite everybody, because an aligned life is revolutionary and everyone's contribution matters. And because I'm done missing me, and I hope you are too. Let's begin. Thank you so much. I love these questions in the chat. So many beautiful questions. I won't be able to get to all of them. I do think daily practices are critical. My book talks through a whole alignment process. My TEDx that you can find, Work-Life Balance is a Lie, so you can find that on YouTube, also speaks to a little bit of how we can move through that alignment process, internal shifts and external shifts. But it always starts with noticing. It starts with those personal practices to really pay attention to our life mosaic and what really matters to us. Thank you so much.
Yes, Kathy, thank you for your valuable time. And we have a few questions from our audience, Kathy. I want to ask you one of them.
Great. Okay.
What was the biggest challenge in your transition from teaching to business?
That's a great question. There were many challenges. So I had been a teacher. I had honed those skills for a long time, and then becoming a teacher trainer. Obviously, the teaching still applied. My work as a professor, it still applies. But running the training program now for 10 years and growing that, I really had to work with a team. I had to learn how to read a balance sheet. I had to learn, how some of those different, business sides of things work. U.S. Taxes can be very complicated, so there was a lot to learn there. But I worked with a team. I had some business mentors. I had some great accountants. I believe that we each have our important work to do, and so we're here to make each other better, right? I don't have to be the CPA. I can be the teacher. I can lead my team. Being a teacher did prepare me to be a great leader, I believe. But the business side of things did take some time to learn. Thanks for that.
That was really a great journey, Kathy. And thank you so much for being here. And please be on the backstage and please join our next session.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who's left some kind notes in the chat. I really would love to stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.